Okay, here we are. Survey says get started with Qualtrics. We did a mic check earlier, but do let us know in the chat if you are having trouble hearing, and we'll see if this is something we can address quickly. So let's get started. My name is Jason Kapp. I'm the KU Qualtrics brand administrator. I do that in my role as a principal analyst with the Business Intelligence Center, also known as BIC. I will be giving you a tour of Qualtrics today. We are recording today's session, so after the presentation, the session will be uploaded to the KU Technology channel on YouTube. A couple of notes about today, getting set up. Please mute your microphone. You can see that in the bottom left of your screen. Also, it helps to expand the meeting window so you can see everything clearly. And also, it would help to open the chat and participants panel so that you can participate with us. There's some nonverbal feedback icons under the participants panel, and we'll try and make use of this today with some yeses and nos, go slower, go faster. And now here we are on to Qualtrics. Here's a little presentation overview. So today, I'm going to demo the basic functionality of Qualtrics for beginning users. So I'm going to consider this a success today if you are a beginning user and by the time we're done, you are able to create a survey from scratch all the way to distributing it with some details along the way. If you are a little more experienced as a Qualtrics user, I hope you can pick up a few extra details along the way. There's a lot of granularity to Qualtrics, and we're not going to get too deep in the weeds, but we'll pick up some important details along the way. So what we're going to hit today, we're going to talk about why Qualtrics, why you might want to use that. There's a few KU-specific Qualtrics details that I want to go over with you. It covers a lot of the tickets that I get in ServiceNow are related to some of the KU-specific Qualtrics details. So I want to point some things out to you about that. And then we're going to dive right into Qualtrics itself. We'll talk about creating an account and signing in. We'll look at the projects page overview, which is kind of like your home page in Qualtrics. We'll spend quite a bit of time on survey creation, blocks, questions, logic, etc., look and feel, survey flow, and also about collaborating on survey projects. Then we'll move into distributions. Once you've created a survey, how to get it out to people, and we'll cover a little bit of data and analysis and reports. And then finally, we'll talk about where to go for more help and see if you've got any questions left over at the end. So let's go. Why Qualtrics? Why would you ever want to be a Qualtrics user? Well, Qualtrics is great at self-service data collection in a survey format, which means it's great at you building your own way of asking questions and collecting data in the format of a survey. Some use cases would be if you've got an event or program that you want to open for registration or get feedback on. Qualtrics could be used for that. It could be used for research involving respondent data. You've got information you need to collect from a variety of users. Qualtrics could be a platform for that. I've seen it used for advising notes, so advisors can create a form for themselves to fill out as they're advising students. Gives you a nice central location for that and a way to look at the data of those notes as you go along. Could be used as a grading rubric. I know that 1,000 years ago, I was an English GTA, and I would have loved to have Qualtrics then. I ended up making my own spreadsheet to help me with grading essays and papers, but you could use Qualtrics for that as well. You could use it for data requests, evaluations, testimonials, things like that, for team elections and group choices. Or you could use it also to submit an idea or request. And this is this last point is something that the Business Intelligence Center, BIC, specifically has set up recently. We facilitate the use of Oracle Analytics Cloud, or OAK, and so we have a Qualtrics survey for people to submit ideas and requests for their OAK usage. So just a few examples, but there's hundreds more of why you would want to use Qualtrics. So let's look at a few KU-specific details. As of today, October 24th, 2018, KU currently has 3 Qualtrics licenses. There's the campus-wide license, which launched about a year ago. You can reach that by going to survey.ku.edu. This particular license is available to all KU students, faculty, and staff, and it uses single sign-on to create your account and to maintain it. There's also 2 other existing licenses that are older than the campus-wide license. There's the School of Education license. You can see the URL there. It's kansasedu.qualtrics.com. There's also a School of Business license, KU Business. Or there's a chance that you have an individual account you created on your own, and most of the time the domain for those individual accounts have Q sharing in the domain. The reason that this is important, having 3 licenses can create some confusion. I get a lot of questions. Of the questions I get, a high percentage of them are things that deal with which license is my account in. Someone shared some examples. Someone shared a survey with me, but I don't see it in my account. Well, a lot of times that puzzle is solved by figuring out which license your account is in, or if maybe you have 2 licenses in 2 different accounts. Creates a little bit of confusion. The quick answer to that question is to look at the domain once you logged into your Qualtrics account. If it's KU Survey, you're in the campus-wide license. If it's Kansas EDU, you're in the School of Education license. If it's KU Business, you're in the School of Business license. Or you could be a one-off individual account in Q sharing. A lot of the puzzles I solve are figuring out where is this account and where do you want it to be. We can always migrate an account from an individual education or business into the campus-wide license. The plan is to have this no longer be an issue by the end of 2018. It's not on the calendar yet. We haven't booked a date for it, but the plan is to consolidate these 3 KU licenses into the KU Survey license. I've been talking with Qualtrics. They're developing a new tool to make this easy to do. There's no downtime during the migration for anyone who's taking surveys, so active surveys remain active. It's seamless from the perspective of a survey taker. There is a little bit of downtime for an account holder, but it's going to be measured in hours, not in days or weeks. And I will be communicating with the account holders in education and business as we firm up plans for making that happen. So those are KU specific details. And now we're going to dig into Qualtrics itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on survey.ku.edu. The way you would go to this domain if you already have an account, and you would log in with your single sign-on credentials. If you've never logged in before, it will ask you for your single sign-on credentials, and behind the scenes it will automatically create this your account in the KU survey instance. So let's click on that. And here we are at my single sign-on. So I will log in. And here we are in Qualtrics. So I'm going to minimize this so I can see. Here we go. So what you see, I'm going to go up to the top level. Over here, I have a left sidebar that shows me folders. I can see who's shared things with me. I can also create folders, and so let's do a walkthrough of this. I like to have this left sidebar visible all the time because it helps me kind of stay oriented of where I am, but I could also collapse it like this and open it back up. So I've created a folder structure to help keep me organized. You can do the same. When I'm on all projects, I can view in a straight format all the projects that are visible to me. I could zoom into projects that other users have shared with me, and I can also see who those users are, how many, and if I click in, I can see that specific one survey that, for example, Matt Baker has shared with me. And then I can also down here see the folders that I've created. So I'm a big fan of staying organized. You can do the same, I encourage you. Creating a folder is as simple as clicking new folder, naming it, and pressing enter, and it keeps them organized alphabetically. You can also make subfolders. When you see I hover over name, I see a gear here. I could rename that if I don't like the word name. I could also add a new folder, which creates the subfolder. So lots of ways to stay organized here. Now over here, there's two ways you can view your projects. The way we've got this open right now is big fat ribbons. Each ribbon is one project, and I can see some information about it, the name of it, when it was last modified, is it active or not, the number of questions, number of responses. There's a little, the little ellipsis over here gives us more information. If I had permission to, I could collaborate. I could show where this is. You can take a quick look here, renaming. I could edit the survey from here. There's another view. This is one way to view it, but there's another view that I can do by clicking the little, the skinny hamburger here. So I'm on the fat hamburger. I can go to the skinny hamburger. And here I get a much tighter view with some different information. I've got it set up where I can see the owner here. But again, there's another ellipsis where I can decide what do I want to see for this view. And then the same actions that I could see before are visible here. So that's the overview of the projects view. Projects is Qualtrics' word for what most of us would just call surveys. That's what we think of when we think of Qualtrics. These are the surveys. So now we're going to drill into a specific survey and start looking at the details of that. I've got a folder called Qualtrics Training, and in there I have got a survey called Webinar Wednesday. So just by clicking on that, I can open this up into my edit view. So what I see, we're going to spend some time on this view, the types of questions and how they're organized, and then we'll drill down into look and feel and survey flow, etc. The first thing I want to call out is these questions are sectioned off into things called blocks. It's another organizational tool. Let's imagine that you're creating a survey where you want certain kinds of questions to be organized together for the purpose of just keeping yourself organized, but maybe you also have survey logic where you want to show a particular block to a particular user based on how they answered one question. A block is how you would do that to keep your questions grouped together in a logical way. So I have a block called introduction. I could hover over this and name it whatever I want. And in here, I've got a few questions. So here's where we're going to start digging into different types of questions. There are over 100 different ways to ask a question in Qualtrics. We're not going to cover all 100 today, but we're going to go through some of the more popular ones, and I'm going to get you oriented on how you can explore them yourself. So the first question I've got here, I'm going to click on it, and you'll see over on the right, I get a sidebar that is specific to this question, and I get some things I can do to this question. The first you'll notice in the green box here is this is a question type called text graphic, which is a static kind of question. It doesn't require any input from a user, but it's a place where you could put in, for example, introduction information to the block or to the survey. If you had a graphic, you could put it in here. And I've got it set up as rich text, which means I can edit font size and bold and colors and things like that. You can see I've used red here and bold. So that's the first type. That's a static question. And then we'll highlight the next question here. You can see that I'm looking at a multiple choice question. Do you like movies? Yes or no. If I click on multiple choice as a drop down, I can see all the basic question types that I could change this to. And as I hover over each of these, I get another drop down that shows me the many types of multiple choice questions I could ask from a select box, and Qualtrics is very user-friendly in the support category. As I hover over select box, it shows me what select box means. What does that look like? And then as I go down, I get different kinds of multiple choice questions. So again, if we go into too deep, we're going to get lost in the weeds, but you can see that there are various types of multiple choice questions, from single answer to multiple answer. Do you want your users to be able to pick Mel Gibson and Will Ferrell, or just Will Ferrell? That's the difference between a multiple and a single. And then we could also get out of there and look at various other types of questions, which we'll look at some of these others in more detail as we go. And if I make that change, let's make the change like this. Right now I'm looking at a multiple choice question with 2 choices and a single answer. You may only answer yes or no, not both. I can click over here to make changes to that question. If I want 3 answers, I hope you saw over here, it's added a 3rd choice that I can go in and click here and edit what that choice says. I could go back to 2. Automatic choices is Qualtrics language for, they've pre-populated different collections of answer types. And you can see it is a long list from agree, disagree, and you can see as I hover over, my question changes to what those agree options look like, from strongly agree to strongly disagree, satisfied, dissatisfied. You can see the changing over on my question as I hover down. True, false, with gradation from definitely true to definitely false. Or if I reduced it down to 2 choices, it would be true or false. And so here's something you could drill down to in your own Qualtrics fun time to see the various ways that you could do some automatic choices. And here I can pick single or multiple answer. I can decide how I want those questions laid out, horizontal or vertical. Forced response, do I want to make sure that my respondents answer this question, or is it okay if they skip it? So I've got this particular one as a forced response. And then we won't go too deep into validation, but validation exists. What would you consider a valid choice for this question? A lot of times this can be used for text fields. If you want them to enter an email address in a text field, you can have validation that ensures it actually is an email address with the @ sign, a phone number, a date, a number, alphanumeric, those kinds of things. So you can add validation to a question as well. And then lastly down here, you see we could add a page break after this question. We're going to look at display logic on the next question and skip logic. You can copy a question. If you've designed one you're really happy with and you know you're going to use it more than once, copy it. It's a lot better than starting from scratch. And then you can make edits to the copied. And I can move a question up and down. So let's look at this next question. It's got something a little extra. Let's say I want to know a little bit more about the people who answer no to do you like movies. Well, what I've got here is some display logic. So let's take a look at that. So I've added some display logic that says, okay, the logic is going to be based on this. If on the question, do you like movies? And they answer no. So the answer no is selected. It's all highly logical and granular. If the answer no is selected, if it's not selected, if it's displayed, if it's not displayed. So it pays to slow down and ask yourself, what's the logic for this display? If no is selected, then show me this question. So then I want to know more why you don't like movies if you answer no, is the way this works. And I've included a text field here for that long answer. So the way that I get to that, I'll go up here to this question and show you how you get started on that. There's a little gear next to each question. I've selected add display logic, and that's where I can set that up. There's other things in here we won't go terribly deep in. We could add skip logic. If they answer a certain question a certain way, skip down to the end of a block or skip to the end of the survey. JavaScript can be fun. If you're a JavaScripty person, you could add details on JavaScript. I'm just learning that. Hide a button, hide an answer, etc. Scoring and recode is in there, randomization. So that's our first block. So now you see I've got some blocks here labeled for the different types of questions. I've got matrix questions side by side. So let's look at these in a little more detail. A matrix question allows you to ask about multiple items inside one question. They can be displayed as a traditional list of choices or a drop-down menu, a select box, a text box, etc. So what I've got here are more movie questions. I would like to I would like the user to rate the CGI effects for the following movies. So here's my movies that all have the word last in the title, because for some reason the survey cares about that. And now I want them to rate the CGI effects from extremely believable to extremely unbelievable. So let's click on this. You can see I get another sidebar for the number of statements, the number of scale points. I'm using a Likert scale. Another way that a matrix question could look is like this, a bipolar, from ugly to stylish, profane to sacred. So two extremes. It's called a bipolar. Here I've got rank order. So when's the best time of day to watch a comedy, sci-fi, or romance? And there's mathy types of questions, constant sum. So I could set this up so that this has to equal a certain amount at the end, and they will not be allowed to move on until that math is right. So there are matrix questions, there are side-by-sides. So you see that I've got one question, question 27, and it's got radio buttons right next to text fields. So it's a side-by-side. And as I click around, I get a warning. Don't remove that unless you're serious about it. I can change the text for this answer. There's a drop down where I can change what kind of answer I'm looking for. Is this a text entry? Do I want to edit this in rich text? Do I want to insert a graphic? You see piped text. We're going to talk about piped text in just a minute. So I can edit this. I can, since this is side-by-side, I can edit each of the columns in the side-by-side. So I can change what kind of question I'm asking in this column. I can move it around. Same thing for this column. And if I wanted to add something else to this question, I would add a column over here in the right sidebar, and then I could go to town figuring out what do I want this part of the question to look like. Side-by-sides. Let's talk about sliders a little bit. So you can do a slider question that looks like this. In this particular question, I'm interested if you know how fast these things are supposed to go: an unladen swallow and a DeLorean. And I'll show you at this point, there's on this sidebar, there's something else you can do, which is to preview this question. So if I'm curious about what this question is going to look like for a user, just this question and not the whole survey, I can preview this question. So this is what this question looks like for a user right now. You can see that it's a slider. You can see that as I move it, I get a value. So that can be very precise. And this is an option. I can show that value or not. It's closer to down here. And this is exactly 88 miles per hour. So that's what it looks like. Now, if I make a change to this, you saw that for the user, it started out as 0. I could, for a slider, use a custom start position, which means I can predefine where I want these to show up for a user, if that's something you want to do for your survey. So if I could set these both at 50 and then preview, you'll see that the sliders have started out as at 50. And from there, I can move down. And of course, we have to move this to 88 before we move on, like that. So previewing a single question is a really good, quick way to see if it looks like the way you want it to look like. And then another third variation on sliders is stars for ratings of things. Here we want to rate dream vacation destinations. And so we would probably put that pretty far down there. We might put Twin Pines Mall up here. Ragnarok, I feel like it's a very, that would be a very bipolar response, but I might put it up there. Rank order. So you've got a series of choices that you want people to rank. There's a variety of ways you can display that. Here is a drag and drop way of doing that. We're going to look and see what that looks like. So ranking secret identities, we're going to put Bruce up top. I'm just dragging this. I'm going to put Tony down at the bottom because it's not a secret anymore. So drag and drop. There's other ways we can do that. We can do that with radio buttons. Let's look at, there's text boxes. Let's look at select boxes. So we're going to preview this and see what that looks like. So you see that I've got the up and down arrows. So I would pick Tony and then click him down to the bottom because he can't keep a secret. So we're going to look at multiple choice questions as our last set. It's what I've seen so far, by far the most popular way to ask a question in a survey. But I also want to call out that the general user interface for creating questions, we've pretty much covered it. You select a question, and I'll show you real quick how to add a question because I've pre-populated this. But once I've got a question selected, I can create a new question from the bottom. I can even from here select what kind of question I want it to be. So now it's added a new question and I can start building. The other way I can do that is once I have a question selected, I can add from here. And the hovers are pretty useful too. I want to add a new question above this, below this, or delete this. All right, last bit on specific question types, multiple choice questions. Just as all the other ones, there's a ton of options, and it is the very popular way to ask a question. So you can see on this particular question, I've got it set up as single answer, and you can see that over here in the sidebar. I've got bullets, but I've also added a text field. If you've got a question that needs an other, you can do that, and I've done that the way that I showed you at the very beginning. I've highlighted the text, and then on the drop down, I selected that this is a text entry selection. And then I can also choose how large I want that text entry to be. And all the same things are here: validation, rich content editor, etc. And I said I was going to talk about piped text. So here's a question that uses that as an example. What piped text is it's a way of grabbing information from somewhere else in the survey, most likely from an answer that a user has given you, and piping that information into the content of another question. So you can see in my example that what I've got crafted here is, you said the answer to question 43, you said this to liking movies. This is the yes/no question from the beginning. So this will come out to the user as, you said yes to liking movies, or you said no to liking movies. And then a follow-up question: how does the DC see you compared to the MCU? So I'll show you in here how that works, basically speaking. When I'm editing the text of this question, you can see that I see piped text here. So when I select that, it's going to ask me, well, where do you want this piped text from? You can see that there's, again, a ton of options. But for now, we're going to say, I want this piped text to come from a question, and I want it to come from the question, do you like movies? And not only from that question, but what do you want from that question? Do you want the text? Do you want the choices that were not displayed if we were using display logic? Do you want the selected choices? So we'll do that because we'll all recreate what I showed you already. So I want these selected choices from do you like movies? So that's going to tell me the yes or the no, whatever they picked, and that's what it looks like. It's a lot of gobbledygook, but inside the brackets, it's showing you the selected choices from this question. So quick finish up of multiple choice. This one allows multiple answers. So if you've got a question that has multiple possible answers and you want them to answer as many of them as they can, you would do multiple answers. A drop-down list for multiple choice, select box, multi-select box. So multiple answers I can pick. Select the names that are superhero secret identities. Oops. Well, anyway. So those are the basics of multiple choice questions. Are we picking up any questions on this that I need to? Okay. If you have questions about this, do include them in the chat box, and I'll pick them up sometime along the way, possibly at the end. Okay, so these are the questions. Now we're going to move on to look and feel survey flow. So look and feel is where you can make some choices about how your survey specifically looks. They've changed it. One of the double-edged swords of having it be browser-based, cloud-based is they've changed this layout since the last time I looked at it. But they're still great at user interface, so it's pretty easy to click through and see like, okay, this is an example of what this is going to look like for my user. And so you can make choices about how you want this to look. If you're including next and back buttons, you can make choices about what those look like. Progress bar. I'm a big advocate for progress bars to let your user know how far they've come and how far they have left to go. And then you might want a back button, just depending on your particular use case. Do you want them to be able to go back and change answers, or is it one time through and done? And then you can also edit header and footer information here. This is rich text editing. If you have something particular you want to appear at the top of every page or bottom of every page, this is where you would do that. I'm going to assume that most of you are familiar with rich text editing. You can see all the things you can do here. I'll call out, though, you could also use pipe text in your headers and footers. So if there's something specific from a question or from embedded data or from date and time, you can include that as well. You can include an email address, links to other things. Almost endless possibilities. So that's a quick look at look and feel. Survey flow. So remember way back to the beginning when I talked about blocks. This is where blocks pay off. I could organize the survey by what order I want the blocks to show in. I can also set up logic based on those blocks. So let me get you oriented here. You'll see that right out of the gate, I've got my introduction block, and then I've got some branching logic, which I'll dig into in just a moment. So some branching logic, and that's pretty much it. Underneath the branches, I'm showing different blocks based on my branching logic. So let me read this to you. This is our introduction question, introduction block that has 3 questions. Then we've got some logic, and the logic is, if do you like movies is answered yes, then show me these blocks. And then I've got a complementary branch following that. If do you like movies is answered no, then show a user these blocks. The way that works is I'm adding below, and then I get this dialog box that asks me, what do I want to add? Do I want to add another block? Do I want to add a branch? There's other things like embedded data, which is more intermediate level. We could talk about that another time. A randomizer, which I have using down here, so I'll show you that. Other things, groups, authenticators. So here I want to do a branch, and it's going to ask me to add a condition for that branch. And here's where I say, well, this is a question, and it's very similar to the display logic we used in the survey itself. What question? What logic? If they answer yes, if yes is selected, then show them something else. And that's what I've built here. So I'm going to delete this and show you. Confirm. So I've built this branch. If they say yes, show me these things. So then I've added, show me the matrix block, show me the side-by-side block, and then I've added a randomizer. In this particular case, I have 3 blocks here that I want to randomly show 1 block to a user. I could just as easily increase that to 2. I'm not sure what happens if I say 3. I imagine it would show me all 3. So we could do some logic with randomization, and then I've got, at the end of all of that, end the survey. So here's where whiteboarding or drafting a survey before you get started in here really pays off, because you could figure out if you've got something that's got a degree of complexity, you can build some logic into that and define your blocks and define your branch logic, etc. If you got something straightforward, just a simple whatever 10 question survey that's beginning to end, you won't need to do this. But now you know that this is here. You could do some logic. I want to do this. So that's our survey flow. So let's look at survey options. These are big picture issues. Do you want to include a back button? I'm going to call out the what seem like the more significant items on here. Do you want a user to be able to save and continue? Do you want to show the question numbers? I've said no to that because in my case, I've named the question specific things for me. I don't know if you can see this, but this question I've named matrix intro, and I don't want to display that to a user, so I've said don't show the question numbers. Survey protection is pretty important. How do you want to control who can access your survey? Open access, anyone can take it. Invitation only, so if you've distributed this to people, only the people that receive that invitation can take the link. Do you want the survey to be password protected? If I click this, I get a text box where I get to put in my password. So that's a little protection. The user has to have the password to take the survey. Prevent ballot box stuffing. Let's say you're using this for an election of some sort and you want to make sure every user can only vote once. You would want to prevent ballot box stuffing. That means prevent them from taking it more than once. Down here, let's see, do you want the survey to expire? So you can create a window where the survey is active from when to when. And then there's options you can have for what to do once the survey has been terminated. A default message, a custom message, thank you for participating in yada yada. Do you want the user to see a response summary when they're done? Do you want to redirect them to a particular URL when they're done? You can dig into this. What do you want to have happen to inactive surveys? Do you want to record partial completions? After how long? How long since they last worked on it? How long since they started it? Do you want to delete them after a certain amount of time? So there's things here that you'll want to set up before you send a survey out into the wild. Let's see, so we've done survey options. Let's look at tools. Again, I'm going to call out what I think are the most significant items here, but you can dig in and see that there's a lot of options. There are email triggers, so you could set up an email to be sent if a particular logical thing happens in your survey. It looks very similar. I can add a condition here. What is that condition? Well, again, you can start to see a pattern here. The interface is, well, I want the condition to be a question or embedded data or a quota, and I want it to be, you can imagine a situation with my made-up survey here. If someone answers that they prefer the DC cinematic universe to the MC cinematic universe, I need to have an email notification immediately. Could be a use case. There may be something more significant for a survey you're building, but an email trigger can work like that. Other tools, we can look at quotas. So let's say I worked with someone on a survey where they were having students register for an event, and they needed that there were X number of seats available, and so they needed a quota that would do something when they reached that quota. So this is what this looks like. I can set what I want that quota to be, and then if this were an active quota in the 0 place, I would see where my ticker is at the moment. Again, logical criteria for this. Let's build one real quick. If they answer no to do you like movies, then I want something to happen to my quota. And here's I can edit what I want to have happen. Once the quota has been increment the quota, and once the quota has been met, end the survey. I only want to hear from 10 people who don't like movies. So once that quota hits 10, kick them out of the survey. Or there could be display logic. Once a quota is met, then display or do not display a question, things like that. You could also use quotas in your email triggers. In the case I was talking about, the survey creator wanted to know when there were 3 seats left in a session. And so they got an email trigger when their quota hit the quota -3. And let's look at this. In Tools, under Review, you can generate test responses. So you've built your survey, you're wondering what the data is going to look like, but you don't want to wait until the survey is live to find out that it doesn't look like the way you want. You can generate test surveys, which is it's Qualtrics' way of letting the robots take your test for you, and then you can look at the data and see if you get the expected results. So the way this looks is, I want test responses. How many do I want? I start the test, and now the robots are taking my survey for me. They're done. It's a lot quicker than asking real live people to test it for you. So now those survey results are sitting in my data now. So a quick way to kind of test drive. That's all we'll do for tools right now, and then let's also look at collaborate. So I'm going to pull up someone here. So I want to collaborate on this survey. What that means is I want someone else to co-create the survey with me. I'm working on a project, and I want someone else to have visibility to the behind the scenes of this survey, help me create it, help me distribute it, help me make copies of it, whatever that may be. So if I want to collaborate, I can search. You can see that the search is really helpful here. I'll use Matt Baker from earlier. So I've chosen him from the list. This list that pops up are users that are in this license. So I'm in KU Survey right now. It is telling me everyone else that's in KU Survey that I could collaborate with. One kind of ticket that I get sometimes, an issue, is if you are collaborating with someone who is in one of the other licenses, whether it's their individual account or the business license or education license, their username will not populate in the drop-down here. You need to know their username in their particular license. If you have difficulty finding that out, as a brand admin, I can help you do that. But for now, Matt's in the same license as me. I'm going to add. I could send him a special message if I want to. He'll get a notification in his inbox. And then also I can control some granularity about what I'm allowing him to do as a collaborator. Do I want him to be able to edit, to view reports, take the survey live or not, make copies or distribute it? And these are simple checkboxes. So we'll take him off for now, but you can see where that happens. That's collaboration. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to move on to excuse me, to distributions. So you've built your survey, you've tested it, you've collaborated, everything's rocking, and you're ready to send it out into the wild. You're going to want to distribute it. There's a variety of ways you can do that. A simple anonymous link, you could take this link and put it wherever you want to, and users can click that and take the survey. Emails. You can distribute via email through the Qualtrics system. And you see it's already kind of helped me get started with the body of the email. I'll need to select who I'm going to distribute that to, and this is where contact lists in Qualtrics become relevant. I've already happen to have some contact lists created, so I'll show you what that looks like. I'm going to select this entire contact list. It's going to send to these 2 people in my list. The replies will come to me. When do I want to see it? Or when do I want to send it, excuse me. And then I can put in hard-coded subject text, or if I've got something saved in my library as a specific subject line, I could do that. And this is a rich text editor down here for the body, and I want to call out that you can use pipe text here as well. So there's some fun uses for this. If this email happens to be well, let me think. If this were an email, a triggered email, I could also use pipe text to say, so-and-so answered this on this question, but I could also embed some things from, some content from the survey itself. Yeah, so you could play around in here about what you want the body of the email to send to look like. And then since I've got send in 1 hour here, here's my button to get that going. So that's distributing via email. You could create personal links, which in a nutshell, it creates a comma-separated value file that has the names from your contact list and personalized links. And so once you have that in a spreadsheet, you could do whatever it is you could dream of doing with the personalized link. We haven't used it a lot, but our license has SMS distribution enabled. So you could distribute your survey via texting, via SMS distribution. You could use social media. I don't know if anyone's doing this, but you could distribute to Google Plus, to one of your circles before they shut down Google Plus, other social media. And I'll call out specifically a QR code. Let's say you have a live event that you want to capture some surveys from people. You could have this printed out and visible at your event, and they could scan that into their smart device and take the survey from there. So let's look at distributions and analysis. Again, lots of detail. Let's hit the high points here. Under data and analysis data, I can see all of the, for my survey, the robots who have taken the survey. And if I click on one of them, I can see their answers in survey format. This robot does not like movies. From here, I can also export. If I just want to get that data in a spreadsheet, I can export it as a CSV. There's other formats as well. And there's a lot of details in here. Do you want to have that sent to you as a compressed zip file or just as a straight CSV? Other advanced details for formatting that CSV. And then there are tools over here. The way I've most used this is, let's say I'm done testing and I want to clear the slate before I take it live. I would go to Tools, Delete Data, and delete all my responses. And it's counting my quota for responses, so I want to decrement my quota, and I'm sure I want to delete all 32 responses. So that's how you would clear the slate. Yes? Oh, we have a question. Can you share both a link and QR code for the same survey project? I believe the answer is yes to that. Is there a maximum quota? I believe the answer is yes to that, but I don't hold that in my head. It's way over in permissions and settings. So that's an answer I can get for you later. But yes, and it answers the QR code and link. Yeah, I believe you can use both at the same time. They would serve basically as two different distributions for the same survey, which is possible. Does that answer your question? You are welcome. Okay, let's look at reports. If you don't want to export your data and you want to build a report in Qualtrics, you can do that. I've struggled with how to give you a basic summary of this, but let's click through one example that actually has some data. Here we go. Here in my report, you can see that I'm looking at a report for question 11, and it's broken up the yeses and nos. And if I click this, I get the familiar right sidebar, which shows me options for how do I want to display information in the report for this question. We get some statistical choices here: mean, min, max, sum percentage, how many decimal points. Here's where I've broken out. So it's broken out my yes, no's here. And then I have choices on visualizations here. Simple table, you saw the bar chart. Let's see what the pie looks like. Okay, so we get a nice pie here, if you like pie. And my experience so far, honestly, has been in reports just to try these visualizations out and see if it tells me what I want to know in a way that I want to see it. So this is something that you could dig into in more detail, but you can see that this is where you would do lots of tweaking of how you want a report for a particular question to look. And then you could build that report out for all the questions in the survey that you want to see information on in a report format. Let's talk about sharing reports. Once you've got a report built in Qualtrics, you can create a PDF on that, a Word document, PowerPoint slides, CSV. You can also, there are some use cases for this. You could also make this report public, and I'll show you that real quick. If I make this public, I've got a link here that will take me to a public live version of this report. On the other hand, if I want it public, but I really don't want it that public, I can add access code protection. So only people with the access code could see that live public report. So I've encountered a couple of people who were curious about using that. It's a way for people to just get on-demand information about how a survey is going. What do the results look like so far? Okay. Yes. Let's see. Can you add KU students as collaborators? If yes, do you use their KU email address associated with their Qualtrics account? The answer is yes to both. As long as a user can be in the KU survey license as long as they have a valid single sign-on credential. So that would include KU students. You can add them as collaborators. They ought to show up when you collaborate in the dropdown. I think they do. And you would use their KU email address associated with their Qualtrics account. If for some reason you've got a quirky situation where the student is in the education license, or you're in the education license and they're in the campus-wide license, you would need to get their username. And that's how Qualtrics tracks individual accounts, by their Qualtrics username. If you need help identifying what their username is as an admin, I can help you with that. So let me know if that answers your question. You are welcome. So, looking at the time, I did all right. I'm going to open it up to any other closing questions. I also want to call out where to go for more help. So, as I just said, this is open to KU faculty, staff, and students. If you've got questions about Qualtrics, here's where you go. Anything regarding brand support, that would mean you've got account issues, you want to transfer ownership of a survey, that has to be done by the admin, that's me. You would email bic_help@ku.edu. That creates a ServiceNow ticket for my team, so it's visible to the whole team, and usually I'll pick up the Qualtrics tickets and address any account issues or transferring ownership, moving accounts around, those kinds of admin things. If you have general Qualtrics questions, their support documentation is excellent. You would go to qualtrics.com/support. That's how I've learned just about everything I've learned in the last year, is by starting with their support. It's really great. Or if you have survey-specific questions, design questions, how do I do this in my survey? Not really high bar enough to be a ServiceNow ticket, but you could email me directly, KOEPP, KEP@ku.edu. I take those on as time allows. They're fun little puzzle boxes to solve how you want to do a particular thing in a survey. So as I've got time to do that, I love to do that for individual users. So that is support. That is all I have to share. We could leave it open for if you've got any more particular questions. If you have anything survey specific, like I said, just email me. I'm expecting to see some emails today on these, so we can get to work on getting you where you need to be.